I'd like to introduce the speaker of the day, Stanley Edward Maszczak. They is a multi-passionate speaker, facilitator, writer, and transpersonal coach. His work has been greatly impacted by his long journey out of destructive experiences in fundamentalist religion, acceptance of his gay and gender nonconforming identity, and by his military service. Stanley recently retired from the United States military after more than 21 years in the Army Reserve. Thank you for your service. Where he was mobilized several times for stateside duty overseas and combat zone tours beginning on 9/11 and completing in 2022. Stanley served in military police, public affairs, broadcast journalism, and as a military equal opportunity advisor and organizational climate specialist. He is a longtime student in areas like coaching, metaphysics, dispute resolution, Akashic records, quantum human design, and recently certified as a core gift discovery master facilitator, to name a few. Stanley currently serves as the newsletter editor and president of the board of directors here at the Metaphysical Chapel of Life. Please join me in welcoming Stanley as our speaker today.
Hey, Dina. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good to see y'all. Good to see everybody here. I'm really happy to be back as a speaker today and be able to be in person with you all. It's always good to get down. I live in DC, so it's a couple of hours to come down, but there's such great energy in this chapel, in person and also online. So it's just amazing to me that even when I log into the chapel service, the Zoom space online, I just have that influx of just positive healing energy. And so I'm so grateful we have the ability to be in multiple of these spaces together. I had an experience this morning when I was thinking about more of the message to share today. And it was this experience of, as I was in meditation and chatting with my guides and support system, there's this ringing in my right ear. And it was this, it felt like kind of a pressurizing of the right ear, the feeling of ringing, but it wasn't the normal ringing in the right ear. It wasn't like, for those of us who've ever suffered with tinnitus, it wasn't that. It was the idea of that, or the sensation of observing that. It wasn't actually that ringing that we feel in our physical ears and our heads. And it seems like sometimes that can feel like a weird thing to try to divide between, like the thing or the idea of the thing. But that was the experience that I was having this morning. And so on one hand, a distinction like that might feel like a way to contribute to that illusion of separation between the physical and the non-physical. And on the other hand, it speaks for me to our really great capacity as human beings to live in this time of evolution of our planet and to see the thinness of the veil between the physical and the non-physical today. People who do not see or feel or experience or receive messages and guidance from spirit in some way, in my understanding, do not exist. Every single one of us experiences messages and inspiration and connection with source. There are some of us who believe that we don't. But for me, I think we're always experiencing that in one way or another. A lot of us have been conditioned out of acknowledging some of these experiences for what they are. So conditioned that even if a person feels drawn to develop these abilities, develop these capacities, develop these skills, which is what they are, that they might, in the very seeking of them, trying to push against something, trying to open up, trying to develop, trying to see, they actually contribute the energy to creating that barrier of acknowledging what is already happening. And for me, that comes in during our socialization process, which is different from all of us, but it happens with wherever we grow up, people who tell us what is appropriate and what's not, about how we're supposed to behave, how we're not supposed to behave. At home or in public, how we're supposed to interact in church or go to church, how we're supposed to speak and do things, what's appropriate in terms of what comes out of our mouths, the sounds that we make as we move through the world, how we allow our imaginations to flourish and to share those imaginings and dreams and visions, and sometimes that make-believe with people around us in the spirit of play and fun. I remember when I was a kid, I was in gosh, I was in Mr. Sizemore's class. So what grade was that? I don't know, 5th grade, something like that. And Mr. Sizemore guided us through a guided visualization one morning. And it was very simple and fun. It was something about being a kid, because we were kids, being a summer's day and having an ice cream cone and licking the ice cream cone, and it turns into something else, and just allowing us to play with our imagination a bit. Well, I went home and told my mom about the experience, she progressed way beyond this, just to put that out there up front. But at the time, we were very fundamentalist in our thinking. And any kind of use of imagination or visioning was considered evil and wrong. So she wrote a very strongly worded message to Mr. Sizemore, and let him know that she was a Christian, and because she was a Christian, she did not want her child participating in these visualization exercises that are of the devil. And I had the pleasure of handing him that note and watching him read it. And Mr. Sizemore, on the outside of being a teacher, was also the pastor of a church.
Oh.
And he just called me up and he said, "Doesn't your mama know that I'm a Christian?" I was like, I'm in 5th grade. I don't know what's happening right now. But it was that experience of understanding that we have this capacity within us. And sometimes society tells us that things are wrong or bad, and they are not. Right? So we've got to get through those layers of stuff that's not us, of stuff that's not truth, and connect with the stuff that is truth and is our way of connecting. Because it's never about the thing of connecting. It's never about, can I visualize or see this? Can I hear this? Can I taste, touch this? It's never about the art of intuition or the art of reading itself. It's not about the tarot. It's not about the visioning of the hearing. It's not about communicating with the people that we call those on the other side. The focus on the event or the connection for its own sake, especially if I'm just saying, I just want to be a tarot reader. I just want to be able to see what people see and do what they do. Sometimes focusing too much on that can be a barrier for our opening up and our expansion, because it's never about the thing. It's about the expansion it creates inside of us and how we bless other people with it, because we are here to serve other people. We are here to develop ourselves, and from that outflow, be able to serve other people and help them grow too. So if I get hyper-focused on one specific thing and just let myself stay there, and maybe I've even become really good at developing my gifts, but I keep it all to myself because I feel like I'm not ready yet. Like sometimes that becomes this really big universal experiment in spiritual navel gazing, right? And Source is looking at us going, look, you got to get out there. You got to be in community, share your gifts with people, get it out there. How can you serve the world around you? How can you serve the world around you? And there's nothing wrong with developing and focusing and being drawn to things and following that inspiration, because that's a thing in and of itself too. I think one of the biggest things we can do to develop ourselves spiritually, physically, emotionally, whatever we're developing in this lifetime, is to learn how to listen to the intelligence of our bodies and our minds and our souls and say, for some reason, this particular thing jumps out at me and sounds really exciting. Let me just follow it. Because it's in that following that we find the things that are unique to us that we're here to share and give. And it's not necessarily going to look like what you follow or what you follow or what you follow or how you see or hear or feel or taste or touch. It's going to look like you. And sometimes to do that, we've got to get rid of some of these layers of stuff that told us we're not allowed to visualize, and let it go, whatever that might be for you. So some questions. I like to have questions in my lectures. I don't like to tell as much as just ask you questions and let you come up with the answers. So when you share a message with someone, if you're one who shares messages or does readings or anything like that, how are you leveraging your gratitude for the ways that it's come through you and imbuing that with love and wonder, with care and with empathy for the person sitting in front of you or the group sitting in front of you? How are you ensuring that message bearing, that service is of the greatest service for the greatest good of all in harm to none? How are you feeling that love not only flow to you from Source, but through you into the people around you, knowing that love is the purpose for all of this? If you're a person seeking to develop your skills and your abilities in this realm, whether for the first time or whether you're developing new ones or deepening current ways of connecting, I ask, what is the purpose for that? Because intention does matter. Our purpose and intentions do matter. The earth and everybody on it, we've evolved in a lot of different ways and continue to do so. And as we emerge into that higher vibrational experience and that collective consciousness and that deeper awareness of who we are and why we are and how we are, it might not be a strong enough purpose anymore for a lot of us to pursue these things and these gifts just for the purpose of looking cool in front of other people or showing off at parties or impressing people with our gifts, right? It's got to be for that purpose of higher service. Even just doing it for ourselves is a fantastic way to start and launch off in that direction of following our intuition, following what brings us passion and joy, and allowing that to come through us. And then the next step is to ask, how do I use this to serve others, right? How do I use this to serve others? There's something drawing you to this for a reason. Source is saying, this is interesting for a reason. It's interesting to you and not other people for a reason. Follow it, play, have fun, experience the joy, the love, the overflow of all of that. And then see how we can share it with community. That is, again, for me, one of the first greatest lessons of life is to learn what lights me up, learn what inspires me, and to allow myself the freedom and the space and time to follow it, because it may not necessarily be for that thing. That may just be the thing that gets us closer to the thing beyond it. And if I don't create the space to follow it, I may never see what's beyond there. It would have been really hard for me to jump from being a fundamentalist, King James only Christian to metaphysical practitioner who reads Akashic records. That didn't happen in one step. That was a stair-step process of many different iterations of my experience and my spirituality opening up in different ways. And of course, that's not everybody's path, right? Everybody's path is different. But for me, I had to go through different phases of understanding. And I wouldn't have gotten there if I didn't allow myself the space to say, this lights me up. What would happen if I followed it for a few minutes? So as we go through those phases of growth and development that unfold in the following of our passions and our God-given desires, just like any human being or thought idea or project or job that we're working on, there are always going to be stages of development. Allowing myself the space and the freedom to experience those, to not have to have it figured out already before I get there, to not feel like I have to have all the answers before I do something. Because sometimes the answers come in the unfolding and the questions are more important than the answers anyway. There are always stages of development. So in that process, we have to surround ourselves with people who will extend to us love and grace as we're in the process as human beings. Finding our way, finding our footing, maybe finding new footing, finding our unique way of walking through this earth that we're now allowing ourselves to experiment with for the first time, or for the first time in a long time. And as this new way emerges, sometimes there might be fears that pop up, again, usually stemming back to the ways we were taught growing up or by society or in school or whatever those agents of socialization might have been. And when those fears pop up, there are a couple of questions we can ask ourselves to kind of recenter wherever we need to recenter and still engage in the process. The first question I always try to ask is whatever I'm doing, is this way of being, learning, or expressing, is it harming anyone or anything around me? Or is it asserting any kind of control or dictating ways other people should be in some way or fashion? If it's not, I can take a deep breath and kind of relax a little bit. Always the work that we do is for the greatest good of all and harm to none. And if in some particular way it might be, we can readjust as necessary. We have to be okay and love ourselves exactly where we are, make adjustments, and move forward. The second question that I like to ask is, how do I feel in the doing of this thing? As I'm stretching these new legs, as I'm exercising this part of me, how do I feel in my body, in my mind, in my heart? How do I feel? If the answer is a positive or otherwise expansive kind of feeling experience, then I'm probably on the right track. I can probably trust myself and my body and what I'm being told by myself and my feelings and how my body's responding. If the answer feels constrictive or negative or feels like I'm shutting down or having to hide in some way, it might be because I'm on the wrong track, or it can also be because those agents of socialization are still in the back of our head telling us things are not so. So it's only up to us to make those decisions, to do that discovery process. What can I do? Is there something coming up from my past life that I want to acknowledge and release so I can more joyfully experience this new part of me that I'm creating or allowing to flourish? There are so many models for this work. If we look at the life of Jesus of Nazareth, or many of the other ascended masters, or even the modern mystics today who dared to live counter to the dominant stories of dogma and restriction, we can find the liberation not only for ourselves, but for our community, for our descendants, for our world today, and I think even backward in time, to start extending that love and healing to our ancestors, the beautiful people who came before us and paved the way for us to be able to have these conversations and experiences today. As I heard someone else once say, we need both the inhale and the exhale. We can't survive just inhaling, just receiving. At some point, we have to exhale. We have to let it out. We have to let source flow into us and then through us. It's not for source to flow in and just pool up inside of us. Pool up, rise up, and flow out. If I were to just spend all of my day inhaling with my lungs, it would not take very long for me to pass out. And if I were to do the same, just trying to exhale with my lungs, the same thing would happen. At some point, I've got to inhale. And I'd venture to say that if we do one or the other spiritually for too long, just inhaling, just receiving, just exhaling, just giving, going, we run the risk of experiencing spiritual unconsciousness. So I'm going to close with a few questions for us to consider this week. How am I being intentional about creating time for connection with source, soul, spirit, in the ways that are unique to me individually, allowing room for fun and play and experimentation and creative expression, all those things that I know feed and nourish me and my soul? How am I choosing to make meaning from the messages I receive from spirit, whether through people serving as message bearers or things that I hear or read or see or the synchronicities that happen in life? How am I choosing to acknowledge those and name them, but also take inspired action on those supportive messages I receive, thus allowing that exhale part of the process? If I come to chapel every week and get these awesome messages every week and then never act on them, Spirit's gonna be like, what are you gonna do with it? This isn't all just for fun. It is fun, but not just for fun, you know? So how am I allowing space to play with that? Am I allowing myself to create the positive change and the supportive experiences that meet the needs of my physical life and body and of those around me? In this physical life, we have needs and things we have to fulfill. We have to do things to make sure our physical life is taken care of and our families are taken care of. Am I being so focused on the spiritual that I'm not doing the action in the physical that creates what I need for myself and my community? How do we do that and create space for ourselves to do that? Lastly, how am I serving and intending to serve the people and communities and planet and the living planet around me? How am I allowing my unique ways of being, whether individually or in community, to be of service to loving, expansive life, to my own life in all its dimensions, and to the lives of my family and to those that I come into contact with on a daily basis, the people I pass on the street or in my car? And lastly, what can I do today to cultivate more of this balanced living in ways that are balanced uniquely for me and how I'm wired to balance, regardless of what balance may look like for other people? It's not 50-50 in things. We are all balancing things differently. We're wired energetically differently. So how am I creating balance that makes sense for me and how I'm here and why I'm here and my purpose for being here? I'll leave that with you today. Happy autumn, happy October, happy full moon yesterday. Enjoy the rest of the service.